Welcome to the mushroom tutorial for Maya. This is following off Wednesday's class, and you'll be expected to complete this in Tuesday's class. So we'll start by placing a cylinder and rotating it to the 90. We'll elongate it so it appears to take the proportion of a mushroom stem. We'll place it just above the grid and get it sitting snugly right on top. Now we will take the top off the stem. We'll do this simply by selecting carefully each face and shift click, as well as then deleting all of these faces. This is good practice to have no interior faces when combining an object. Next up, we'll add the mushroom cap. I'm going to use a sphere for the mushroom cap because it's a good object to modify. So we'll start by scaling it up oversized to about 10. Now we'll modify this so it's 90 degrees and directly over the top using the rotate modifier and fixing it up in the channel box there. So we'll scale, rotate, and translate so it's just above the stem. We've gone oversized, but that's not a problem. We can modify that later. Now we'll select the bottom half of the sphere and we'll modify that with the scale tool. So we want it roughly about a quarter of the size. And as we can see now, that's starting to resemble something of a mushroom cap. So what we'll do is we'll select the entire object, the sphere, and we'll scale that again in the Z direction. So it has a reasonably bulbous cap, but a flattish bottom. Now we're just putting that into position there. Note that we're only using the translate modifier constrained in the Z direction. So what we're after now is to get the edge loop to match the aperture at the top of the stem. Now we're just doing this by eye. It's an approximation from now. We can fix it up later. What we'll do is just hiding everything except for the cap. We can now go on and select each of the faces to fix that to the mushroom. So deleting these faces, selecting them individually, and we'll show all so we can bring back the stem and bring the edge loop down a little bit to see if we can get it a bit closer. As we can see there, there's still a fair gap, so we'll just tighten that up a little bit more. And looking inside the mushroom now, we can tighten that up even more, just trying to minimize that as much as possible. See how they nicely align there. So now what we'll do is combine the two together, selecting both and hitting the combine key in the hotbox under mesh. And after this, we will merge the vertices of the two selected edge loops. Note that if one or more of the vertices do not merge, simply select the vertices individually and reapply the merge tool and maybe increase the tolerance from 1 to something just above 1. You don't want it too large because if you have the tolerance set too high, what you'll find is that you'll bring in other vertices that you didn't necessarily want. So as you can see here, we've got it smoothed using the 3 key and it's a little bit bulbous down the bottom. We'll just define that by adding in a couple of edge loops and fixing up that flute at the top. And going to object mode there, we can see that as we predicted before, the cap's it's disproportionately large to the stem. So we'll fix that up by selecting the faces and scaling them down, and then translating them down as well. Oops, you can see there, it's quite obvious that the selection that we chose wasn't exactly great. So we'll just get rid of the grid for the moment because it's obscuring our vision. And we'll select some edges and we'll bring them across using a translate tool. Oops, stuffed up again. I've accidentally selected the edge loop tool down the bottom, you can see there, highlighted in orange. So what we're just going to do is going to unhighlight everything, sorry, and then select the two edges there and translate them using the constrained translate tool. What we're aiming here to do is basically to get those concentric circles looking nice and a la natural. And what we do is we just simply grab the pivots and move them independently, just using constrained axis. Now, it's not going to really matter that much, but it's an incredibly good habit to get into to try and get these. If you have an object like this, which is, symmetrical and whatnot, and you're about to bring it into something like a mud box, it's quite useful to have all of the vertices looking good. And we can see now that's approximately looking pretty good. So pretty happy with that. One last thing just to finish off with the central pivot tool. Notice that it's in the center of the mushroom. Now, if we were going to bring that to a scene, you'd see half of the mushroom disappearing if you snap to a grid or to another object. So what we're going to do is hitting D, move that central pivot down to the bottom, holding V down so it snaps to vertice. And what we'll do is we'll bring back that grid, and as you can see now, if you hit the X key, it will snap to grid and it will move anywhere on the grid, which is kind of handy if you've got a mushroom that you want to stick in the ground, or a tree for that matter. It's pretty useful. Anyway, that's the mushroom tutorial. On Tuesday, we expect to see you, or at least attempt, to do this mushroom from scratch. Best of luck. My suggestion is watch this tutorial once or twice, then see how you go making the mushroom. And if you do come into any snags at any point, just go back and look at the tutorials. Maybe make, say, 5 or 6 mushrooms, all from scratch, and take it from there. I guess the point being is that the more you do a object repetitively, the better you'll get at it. If you find mushrooms a little bit easy, try something else. Think of some objects in nature or some very simple objects that you can create base meshes for, and just give it a shot. Combining objects together and combining meshes using the merge vertices command. All right, best of luck. See you on Tuesday.